Before we get too much further, I wanted to cover some caveats about the way that I tend to write my JavaScript. You may have noticed that I tend to leave out things like semicolons. You may be super used to putting semicolons everywhere at the end of a statement. I personally have recently decided that I kind of hate them, and so I've been removing them from my code. Obviously, there's still some places that you simply can't avoid them. For example, when you're writing a C-style for loop, 0, semicolon, that's necessary in order to separate the three different statements on one line. But for the most part, at the end of statements, they're not really required, and they won't break anything by not having them there. This is totally a personal style decision, and like I said, one that I've only recently made. In fact, it's such a strong habit for me that I may accidentally put some semicolons in future videos. Another personal preference is, although ES6 technically gives us the ability to put arrow functions everywhere we used to have the function keyword, for example, I can say const app equals an arrow function. And one of the benefits of this is actually that I can actually just wrap everything in parentheses and get rid of my return. And in this case, I could even simplify it like this. I've either not yet gotten used to this syntax, or I simply don't care that much for the look of an arrow function. I think they're extremely useful in certain instances. For example, whenever you normally would put an anonymous function, or when you need to write a class method, which we'll talk about later. But my personal preference is to keep the function keyword, and it just, to me, makes it look a lot more like a regular function component. There's a lot of people who will disagree with that, and I'm totally fine with that. I totally understand the preference for doing it as an arrow function. But me personally, I tend to keep my function keyword in there for my functional components. I'm not going to necessarily advocate for one way or the other, so that's totally a decision that's up to you. Okay, I just wanted to get some of that out of the way. Let's move on.